All right, welcome back to Presspass. Hashtag is Presspass. We're taking your feedback, and we left at a point where we needed to have begun, but even the conversation we've had is substantial. So I want to read a few. Akal Oyosikwaj says it's more tribal than partisan. Today, you aired a live tribal Kamba meeting. I think that's where Kalonzo Musyoka was. Over the weekend, you aired Jubilee leaders speaking Kikuyu at Uhuru Park. You know, gentlemen and ladies, something that we don't have control over. When they go to the podium, we are covering the rally. And at that point, they decide to switch over to Kikuyu.
Did you say you have no control over it?
No, but you cannot predict that a leader at the platform is going
Before
to...
you take the OBs to State House, before you deploy resources from the newsroom, there's got to be certainly editorial planning. There should be anticipation.
Obviously, exactly. No. Sadiq,
yeah.
Just wait. Yeah. We are at Uhuru Park. We're covering a rally. The president is in attendance. Yeah. We see all those leaders who are in attendance. You don't anticipate that a leader is going to shift, you know, to speak in Kikuyu for a few seconds. Today I was on air at 4 p.m. Right. When Kalonzo Musyoka, we took him on air, he was speaking English and Swahili in Machakos. Suddenly, he shifted, you know, to his local dialect.
Let's look at other examples.
Yes.
Forget about broadcast. Why should Nation Standard, The Star, the People Daily have what I call tribal headlines? What you send to Coastis, you know, for that tribe there, what the headline you send to Mount Kenya.
You tell us, because you are in a position to tell us.
That's why I agree with the gentleman that the media is also playing ball in, you know.
There is no problem in airing content in local language.
Certainly.
There is no problem per se. That's what we need to understand.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that what will divide this country is only spoken in local languages. In fact, most of the vilification of each other in this country is in English and Kiswahili by the elites. So do not denigrate local languages, thinking that when you speak in English, that makes the country cohere. That's not the problem. The problem that is in the country is how we then appropriate certain forms of whether English or Kiswahili as descriptors of certain people. And either we perpetuate them knowingly or unknowingly, are creating stereotypes. That's what is the problem. By virtue that people speak Luo or speak Luya or speak Mijikenda, in and in of itself, is not the problem this country is having.
I totally agree. And Ken, my point still refers that when we deploy resources, okay, we should at least have a background to what we are going to do there. And I think this is what it's clearly come out in the last 2-3 months, speaking about these elections, that nowadays media houses have an expanded space and resources. They can go live from anywhere. Yeah. You see split screens, about 8-5 reporters on location, and they go live. Now, we may say we have no control about what they're going to say, but technology can make us delay this broadcast.
Yes.
So there is no excuse here. We need to invest in technology.
What about the print?
What about
just about technology?
Yes.
Actually, the law. You're not actually supposed.
What about the print?
No, the print.
A broadcast, a live broadcast without, you know, that delay.
Mm-hmm.
Relay delay.
True or false?
Yeah, you can delay.
Yes, you can delay it.
You can delay the broadcast. So we have no. I mean, ignorance is no defense here. We are capable.
And
all
two,
right,
just mark it as sponsor content. If you're not going to curate it as a journalist, don't pretend that you are being a journalist on that.
Let me twist this, and I'd like Janak to respond on this. Janak, what do you think? Should we play a role in prepping the leaders and tell them, please stick to English or Swahili?
No. Personally,
Or just have a reporter there.
Personally,
on the ground.
Let me tell you, in Kenya we are criminalizing our languages unnecessarily. Local languages need to thrive, and let the leaders speak in any language they want. Now, unless because they say outrageous things even in Kiswahili or English. So like Henry says, the issue is not the language. Look at our immediate neighbors. What languages are they using? What language?
Rwanda, Kinyarwanda, Uganda, Buganda.
There's even a smaller community within Rwanda or Burundi that does not necessarily speak Kinyarwanda. Of course, they have been assimilated, fine. But then, I mean, in Ethiopia, in Uganda, which language are they using?
Luganda.
And is it them? I mean, it is the major language for just one of the communities. but it has been adopted across. In South Africa, how
So
many
you are
languages
agreeing.
there?
So you are saying, speaking in your, I want to give you an example before you conclude your remark.
Yeah.
There was the national day that was held, I think it was Nyeri or something. We had a whole governor speaking a national function in his local language, national function. Was that okay?
No, certainly at a national function.
It was a national function.
Yes.
Was it
like what we
Madaraka?
had-
Yes.
the
The Nyeri,
Nyeri,
yes.
that one
Madaraka.
obviously,
That was wrong.
that is out of turn. That one certainly is unacceptable. Because you see, you are addressing the entire nation, and it is something people are glued to. But even addressing a rally in some corner or something like that, let people speak in
Like
whichever
Machakos.
language.
Sorted. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Let me go through a few more. Julius Swaguma says, without looking back, yes, please, why keep quiet when things are going wrong? And this is something the media has taken a lot of flack on. For example, not being able to have our own results for the election. And this stems from that. Dennis Wabwire says, very partisan. For instance, no single media aired the announcement of presidential results at the polling station. Media is not just partisan, but also corrupt. Do you remember the same pictures in all newspapers? Same angle? Tells it all, money speaks. And it's individual journalists, not the media. Guilty as charged. Who do I begin with?
I can go first.
All right.
I think there's some truth in what the accusations we have, but we are working in very difficult moments. You have NTV, which wants to broadcast in Swahili and in English, and you go to western part of the country, and the key speakers, the news sources, decide to switch and address the voters. How do you then prep that content? Or how do you decide to switch off and address those issues? And brings down why would Nation Standard, all these print newspapers, have 6-7 headlines every day speaking to, the diversity that Kenya is. Those are challenges of modern times. But it's not only about Kenyan media. Look at Donald Trump. The American media shunned him, covered him. At the end of the day, he became president and, and said, I don't need the media. Out of over 700 media houses in the U.S.
Well, you don't need to go far.
Only
You don't
30
need to go far.
endorsed.
You don't need to go far. You don't need to
Trump,
go far
yeah.
to the U.S.
Yes.
You saw what happened during the presidential debate. Politicians just elected not to turn up for the debate. I think that was a very damning indictment on the media, that we have put our standards so low that politicians can just jump over and walk away without any ceremony. We have lowered our standard consistently over time, and that is why we've become such a toy to be thrown around it. Ken, you've asked the
Not
question.
politicians, I only know of
Yeah.
one.
Before we
One
go
of
to your
your-
question,
yeah.
because I want everyone to comment on this. But someone that is Douglas Okwach, Douglas, is asking a direct question to you, and I'd like you to respond, then we can go to this. He says, Ohito, for example, is a good guest to kick off the partisan debate. All I need to ask you is how you balanced your political ambition and your job as an editor, because that will give quite an insight in the partisan debate.
I told you I'm a well-groomed, principled individual. I don't look like those ones we discussed earlier today. When the time came, I put in my resignation. I said, with my fresh ambitions, it's no longer tenable to remain in this office and assume that I'll do my roles impartially. I have decided to quit. I did that. But we have so many editors, we have so many reporters who have taken sides. They have not resigned. And I was told in nearly all newsrooms, when the Supreme Court decision came, there was one lot of journalists celebrating, another lot was mourning. That tells you the dilemma that we have today.
But Ohito, tell me, when you come back to the newsroom, the whole newsroom knows that Ohito was contesting on a particular ticket, right? When you come back and you're looking at the affairs of that party, through what eye do you do that?
Well, I'm not planning to come to the newsroom soon. There are so many things we can do, up to including adding value to content like I'm doing for Nation Media Group now.
Yes.
And there are so many things we're doing out there. So coming back to the newsroom is out of question for now.
Okay.
But
So
the best
challenge,
thing...
the challenge there
Yes.
is that, yes, you have people like Ohito who pick the courage to say that I'm partisan and I'm going to move out of the newsroom.
Sure.
But what is troubling the media today is that we have many of us who are partisan without making those declarations.
Exactly
So we
his
run
point.
into meetings
Yes.
as if we are going to be objective, but our biases, our duty to a given organization, profession or family or business interest outweigh the news values for the function we are going to do. So that's how it's very easy to note sometimes that there are stories written before we go to those functions, because our bias has already clouded our thinking, and we only go to get a quote to justify what we had already written, as opposed to the story that happens there.
But the worst, Ken, is where you have a journalist or a senior editor who says one thing in his own product, and then you go to the timeline of his social media pages.
Completely different.
There's no difference.
Completely different. I'd like to pick that, because we had a debate with Shiko on Facebook the other day when I posted something regarding the executive, and the executive coming out and saying we will impeach. And I asked a simple question which needed not to be translated, and I bring it up. I said, does that mean that the Jubilee leaders who are already saying that if you are elected, you will be impeached, does it mean that they know that this candidate is electable? And we had a debate, so I'd like Shiko to pick it from there. In terms of partisan, what you see when I report and sit here, and what I write on my social media as a journalist, as an individual, what does it tell you?
I feel that your private page actually reflects what you think politically, which is not how I think it should be. When I look at your page, I know for sure, you know, how you lean, who you voted for, who you're going to vote for again. And as much as you'd like to say, this is my private page, and I can put forth my private opinions here, anybody who is privy to that page and will watch you right now on Press Pass will think, I'm leaning towards a certain way because this is where Ken leans towards. And the reality is, as much as we would like to think that we have a private life outside when we're media, we actually do not. If you are a journalist, you cannot express an opinion on your public or private page that is leaning towards a partisan position. You just cannot. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Sadiq, you're affected also.
I think you cannot.
No. I'm saying that because you're a journalist.
I
just
am
that.
not.
No,
Which
him.
media house do I
I'm saying
work?
him. He's affected.
Yes.
No, before we get out of that, I'd like to ask you a question. We have known since we started practicing media, and the veterans can tell us, there are always two sides to the story. That is what they said for the longest time. Then we realized that indeed there's a third side to the story. There is your side, there is his side, and I have my side. Where does it reflect in what I say?
There is, what I see on social media these days is not about this side or this side. This is, I'm sure you're friends with somebody like Tony Moshama, and he's a reporter in the Standard. He writes a poem every day lamenting about how lives are lost. He's not reporting on anything. He's not giving information, which is what journalists do. What he does is he gives a personal opinion. And it's not just him. There are very, very many journalists who take their pages and make it a personal ode to whichever political party they subscribe to. And you can't do that. You can't do that.
I'll give you an example.
Just wait. You're not telling us why we can't do that.
You can't do that because you have a duty and a calling that is higher than the rest of us. Do you know what I am? I don't work for a media house. I am civil society. And when I say that, a lot of people misunderstand what civil society is. In fact, I saw somebody at one point saying that civil society is evil society and civil society are NGOs. People don't even understand where the terminology arises from. Civil society just means civilians. And it's anybody, any Tom, Dick, and Harry who wants to do their patriotic duty to say anything to make their lives better and say, oh, my government is not doing this, even though I voted for them, X, Y, Z. That's a civilian.
Okay.
Now, from the civilian, you have media. Media, the calling is higher and the duty is higher. And the role that people are given as media is almost sacred. The fact that you can give me an example of an embassy that you go to and you're trying to get a visa to go anywhere in the world, and you put journalists there, don't you get better treatment?
And your visa is not even delayed.
If your visa is not delayed, let me finish.
Delayed, yes.
If you want to get a media badge and you go somewhere, doesn't everybody
All
treat
access.
you better? All
Sadiq,
access.
I'll have to hold
that
you
is
a little bit.
because we have a higher calling,
Than
and that
everyone.
calling does not allow us to go and tell people, I think you should vote for NASA or Jubilee.
Olo Janak.
I think within the Kenyan context, it has become fairly complex in terms of whether to have opinion as a journalist and this whole question of partisanship. For me, I think there is nothing patently wrong if you have a column or some space and you want to utilize it to pass an opinion. But like Henry said, that we have the big media, which speaks. It is occupying public space. For example, it would be wrong to utilize nation platforms as an individual to advance some agenda. But if I have a blog, for example, or within the nation, I have an opinion, a space where I can do opinion, there would be nothing wrong with that. I mean, sometimes we beat ourselves too hard. You see that, in terms of that kind of. So my opinion is that it would be wrong, especially in terms of packaging news stories. That is really why we need to be very careful.
But Janak, how do you divorce? If I have a blog
Yes.
that is, I can write anything, I support Jubilee, I can write something about Jubilee that is positive, or NASA that is positive, and then later on my blog becomes very well known, I have a lot of followers, and I'm talking about NASA or Jubilee. Then the next time I'm reporting about NASA or Jubilee, how do people look at you?
The thing is, how professional are you? You are not.
What he's saying
Just
makes a very good point. It's just like
Yeah.
if, for example, you work for Debonair's
Yeah.
pizza,
Yeah.
and you enjoy it, doing your job, and then you go home and you write a blog about a different type of pizza. Are you saying that your employer would be happy about you saying that other pizza tastes great?
No. I think I won't equate it to the pizza business.
No,
I
I'm
mean,
just saying. I'm just saying that you cannot
I think the
say
starting
that
point-
there's a separation
Janak has to
from
conclude.
your job
Yes.
and what you do at home on your personal blog.
What I'm saying is,
I'll give you.
there is a degree of professionalism that is required of a journalist, but it doesn't mean that you can't have an opinion about something. You see that, Because like right now, I think we already made the point that the most dangerous thing is the pretense that we have in the newsrooms about people who have certain positions and they're not coming out. Now, if you come out directly and say that, okay, fine, you subscribe to a certain ideological standpoint, or in terms of some kind of direction of, transformation for this country, I mean, there would be nothing wrong. Let us look at the issue now.
I agree. I agree.
Just hold.
Up to certain
Just
extent.
hold.
Let him
I agree
finish.
with you.
Yes.
Yeah, but
For
I just want to
example-
challenge your thought also on that.
Yes, you will. Look, the Supreme Court ruling has rattled many people within the media sector, just like it has out there. And that is why it's very tenuous relationship within the media, including platforms where journalists are. Because some do not want to say that the Supreme Court ruling is something good for the country. They are retreating into those positions that they have been hiding, and they are unable to come out to say, oh, this is the position. So my point is, the journalists need to be professional, but in my opinion, it shouldn't stop journalists from robustly expressing certain things, only that we need not utilize, major platforms, especially of media platforms, to carry out that agenda. In terms of packaging news, I think really there is no excuse
So
for us
to you, we can draw the line.
Yeah,
we
yeah,
can
we
draw
can,
the
I
line.
mean.
This is how I'm looking at it. By the way, this is a country that gave the world M-Pesa, and it's just scored another big legal precedents in terms of Supreme Court. I think we should be talking about what is it that Kenya will next offer to the world, as opposed to things which are, Moses Kurias and stuff like that.
You're afraid to associate with the...
Here's the deal. Social media just came the other day, about 10 years ago and all that. So social media, some of us are older than social media in this profession. But also it has provided an opportunity that was never there before. These are individual pages. Sometimes there are things, a journalist like myself, I utilize Twitter quite a lot. I say things, not necessarily because I oppose one side or I support the other side. I try so much to strike the middle ground, but then that would be construed to mean that you're a rebel or you are a nonconformist, because we have journalists, and I'll tell you the examples are myriad. You have journalists who openly campaign for Jubilee. You have journalists who openly campaign for NASA. In fact, the other day I was out of town in one of these political rallies, and what I saw, Ken, shocked me, by the way. I'm just going to briefly, I saw 2 helicopters. One was branded Jubilee, and then the other was, you also had branding. And what I saw were media personalities coming out of a helicopter branded Jubilee. And they were reporting on that.
And what is wrong with that if they were transported to the area with a helicopter branded Jubilee, Sadiq? What was wrong with that?
It goes back to the point that,
how,
in
to
fact,
what
Maina was
extent,
saying, how then are you standing here
can you sit
and tell
back
us, for
and
example,
say you'll be able to report something that is not pleasing to the people who offered you transport? You know, the reality is that it's minimum. What we need to understand is that the moment you become a public journalist, as it were, and you are occupying an elevated position, you do not have a way of differentiating between your personal blog and that. And that. I'm just, allow me to say this because you had your turn, sir. You know, so we should disagree, but respectfully, as civil as you had indicated. The point is that if Ken Mijungu is a star reporter in Nation, what you call personal blog ceases to exist to a large extent. Because people who, that's why if you looked at 10 of our journalists, the reason as to why you have many followers is not that you are a good blogger. It's because Nation gave you that platform and people follow you as a result. Otherwise, before you were given that platform by Nation, you didn't have those followers. Then there is a reverse. There are people who, before they got into the media, they had followers. And the media has gone for them because of those followers. So those are realities that we need to think through. But I want to give you an example. There is a lady who's an editorial writer to Post-Dispatch in St. Louis in the US, who, as an editorial writer and a commentator, never revealed that she was a member of the National Rifle Association. But all along, in a period of 1 year, she had like 6 or 10 articles that tended to pacify or push an agenda for National Rifle Association. Remember when there were all these gun-toting guys in the US? When the owners and senior editors discovered that here is a disclosure she had never made to us, but she's been in documentaries for NRA, she's been in promos for NRA, then she's leading a double life, where when we come into the newspaper, she behaves like she's just giving them an objective coverage. But she's doing this from a highly partisan level. She was asked to, had she disclosed this? And she said, I thought they would have known. She was fired. So in our own situation, we need to be able to say, if Sadiq feels he has a big following on Twitter, and that is what he likes most, quit the media.
Let me tell you, Maina, no. You may have to wait longer for me to do that. No, here's the deal.
Otherwise, you are leading a double line.
No, I'm not. I'm actually not. But here, Ken, and I just want to throw it out here. And I think this is a dilemma we need to own up that a lot of us also face. What do you do in an instance where, remember that private page is yours.
Yes.
You don't represent. There are disclaimers there. That opinions and everything there you say does not reflect your employers, does not reflect anybody you represent.
You perhaps be hiding behind the disclaimer.
Not quite. You're just making it very clear.
No, but you're hiding behind
the deal. At what point also, remember, before being a journalist, being a lawyer, a doctor and whatnot, you first of all are Kenyan. There are things that happen in this country sometimes that you cannot keep quiet about. So should you say, because I'm a journalist, I shouldn't talk about this?
All right.
And what is it that you post there? Actually, for me, speaks louder than anything else being associated as a journalist.
Even what you can write and air on TV sometimes, right? What you do on your personal page, because it allows you a lot of latitude. As Ohito, you respond. Fred Okango sent me this. Journalists must put a disclaimer on their social page that personal opinion is not the employer's opinion, what Sadiq is speaking about. I'd like to bring up this tweet also from Daniel Juma Omondi. He says, in civilized societies, journalists who subscribe to particular political ideologies or formations can still report objectively. So as you speak, because I want us to wind up the discussion. on the cure for this?
Coming to.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say, I've been to White House 3 times.
Oh.
And there are resident journalists whose work is to report from White House. They fly on the same Air Force One with Obama
But
or
they pay
Trump.
for it.
Yes, yes,
Press
full. Same 10 Downing Street in UK. So that does not mean that if you are given that high responsibility like Caesar's wife, then you should be playing partisan roles. But my big question is, are we at a level in Kenya
Are we able
to
when
do
we
that?
are
And
in those
two,
helicopters?
no, 2, can media houses
But
in
Ohito.
Kenya
Just wait,
listen
just
to
wait.
Sadiq?
Sadiq,
This
just-
will not go and challenge Ohito.
You'll
The
challenge
other day,
it.
the president called everybody there. What did the media do, including yourself, for instance?
I wasn't part of the
No, I'm just saying, you know, we also need to be honest to ourselves.
Yeah,
the day Uhuru
let me
Kenyatta
make my point.
called
Yeah,
people,
yes.
what did journalists do? We were accused there of going to drink
Have tea, yes.
and ask for ambassadorial positions.
That-
you see, these are kind of
You're
things that
delaying
also,
my-
No, I'm not
the
delaying.
crux
So I'm saying,
It's okay.
even as we
Let's
make this
speak to
conversation,
Ohito. Yes.
Be a
you
good
must be
debater.
alive.
Be a good debater. I was saying in the US, for example, I said here before that over 500 media houses did editorials endorsing Hillary Clinton. During Brexit, more than 70% of the media houses endorsed. Are we in Kenya at that level
Where
where
we
the
can
Nation
take that
Media Group
position?
can say
Yeah.
we are supporting Raila Odinga as president on October 17 for the following reason?
Did that
But
not
that,
happen?
Or Uhuru
but
Kenyatta.
that does
Did
not,
that not happen during
but that
that?
does not mean that we stop any content that is speaking positively about
the
President
other
Uhuru
one.
Kenyatta.
It's very true. As we wind up, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like us to talk about the cure to this, because we have established that it's not just media houses, and we know this is not entrenched in their policy, and it's not just individuals, particular people, it's spread across the board. So what is the cure for this? What is the cure for this? How do we ensure that we don't say, do we go the Ohito way, where we can, as media houses or as individuals, you look at me and you see Ken Mijungu Jubilee? Or is it the media houses that take a stand? How do we cure this? And I'll give you an opportunity, because we started from the other end. I'll start with you, Shaban.
Ken, I
as
just
we
want to
close.
read very closely a quote here by Weaver Warren Adams, and they say the biases in the media are much bigger than conservative or liberal. They're about getting ratings, about making money, about doing stories that are easy to cover and keeping us in uproar. I think that statement speaks for me in so many respects. But in the interim, it is almost foolhardy to imagine that human beings will not be biased. Psychology, anthropology, and everything else has taught us that human beings are naturally biased. We will never get rid of bias reporting and bias in all our conversation. I mean, even lawyers who are representing each party in court probably were on the other camp at one point in time. But I think we need some sort of newsroom revolution in this country. We need a paradigm shift of some sort. Commercial interests, political interests are so much that it's almost impossible for a journalist to be able to work. And in an expanded space, the players become many, as you have seen, the media houses have become many. The radio stations are now too many. It's almost impossible to keep a proper gatekeeping mechanism without falling prey into some of these things. But I think as an interim, we were accused just 3 weeks ago, before the Supreme Court made the decision, that we decided to preach peace because we were inducted in the 2007-2008 post-election violence. So we decided to sweep a lot of things behind and just say we are preaching peace. International journalists were said to be doing a better job than us because we didn't want to ban this country and we didn't want to be seen to be going the way we did. But I think also during this time, our credibility has been dented so much because also the media flung open its doors, invited people we call analysts, some people on TV who came and lowered this profession before right-thinking members of the society. You're a lawyer, you would know that language. So I think we need to do some bit of house cleaning first. Okay. The media does not need to give people space. Just because you have live use, just because you have live opportunities, then you can go to Mombasa, you can go to Nyeri. And also, and I think this will also go to the Correspondents Association, we have given too much power now to our correspondents with the live facilities without training. Some of those young people need mentorship. They need training because the kind of politicians and the content that's coming in live there unfiltered is what is giving us egg on the face.
Blame it on the planning here. You just mentioned at the top that there's editorial policy and there's editorial planning. I think you're done with your remarks. All right, Sadiq Shaban. And as we go to Ohito, I'd like to read a series of tweets. Dennis Itumbi was supposed to join us here. One tweet, he says, absolute media objectivity is a fallacy. If you are informed about a topic of coverage, you hold an opinion. Next, he says, in the future elections, IBC should allow journalists to vote a week before the date of the election for obvious good reasons. And lastly, he says, taking a partisan position, as long as it's declared, like Citizen TV, Citizen Kenya has done in the past, is a high form of objectivity. Hashtag press first. And lastly, to reiterate on your point, Joel Kioko says, we can talk all day, but the partisan will remain partisan. Ohito.
Thank you very much. I want to reiterate the fact that media plays a cardinal role in any democracy. But we have since lost that credibility. We must restore confidence in our audiences, and we can only do that when we retain high-end content that really resonates with our audiences. If we don't do that, it will be very difficult. But we are living in different and difficult times where you have a hostile government that attacks the media. It brings bills that want to diminish our space and basically muzzle freedom of expression. And conversely, we also have commercial interests that the day, I know of no journalist today who can write a one-page critique against the top brewer or against the top telecom and stay in the newsroom. You will be shown the door. Newsrooms are being run by bottom line. How much profit have we made? And that has really compromised the position of journalists and editors. We are in difficult times, but we must confront the situation. But that does not mean we must be impartial or insensitive to the diversity that Kenya is, that we can ban the country or be accused of fueling partisan or ethnic hatred. I think we can stand up and reclaim our space and make Kenya a better country.
All right, as I move to Oshiko, TW Chandler at Gordon _ Austin says, the media struggles to draw moral equivalence in a bid to protect fake neutrality. Shiko. Not necessarily respond to, I just read the tweet.
Well, yeah. I find it interesting that the media always gets attacked, but at some point, they will always come back and say, where are you, media? And that did happen, especially after the election, where I think somebody mentioned that there was a bit of a, taking back, a step back because of what happened in the last election and not necessarily feeling that everybody has to report every single thing that is happening here or there or every flare-up. And when people were asking, why isn't the media telling us what's going on? I remember reading on social media pages of many journalists, where you guys always say, mainstream media is crap, and you don't need us. Why are you looking for us now? and everybody thought it was hilarious. And it was good, because you only appreciate what you have when you don't have it anymore. And I feel that in that period, people did see mainstream media for what it is. And it's very important, because this is fact gathering. And it's also business, because at the end of the day, you have to pay all these journalists to come together and send them to here or there or where to do what they do. And somebody on social media thinks, here I am on my own, and I can do the same job that Nation will do, or Standard will do, or anyone else will do. And it's very wrong.
Okay.
They are not appreciated. Mainstream media is not appreciated. And terms like those is when people understand. And that's all I can say on that.
All right, Janak.
Yeah. Now you see, look at the history of this country. It is not a question of us saying that the media is finding itself in a difficult situation just now, or or the country finding itself in. How have we managed in the past? When we had the multi-party, the campaign for multi-party, process or return of multi-party in 1992, how did the media perform? Was the media blamed as it is being blamed now? No. You see, the media is a pillar of democracy. If it stands with what is transformative, nobody will blame it. You see that? In 2000, I mean, in 1992 and so on, the media dared, even when there were calls from State House, to report about things that would take the country to another level. In 2002, the media virtually swung to the Kibaki side. I mean, there are media houses that gave a fee note to the NAC regime. I mean, a fee note in terms of demanding me, because they transformed themselves into state broadcasters. They did. And nobody accused them. It is because at that moment, it was fashionable to align ourselves to what we thought was a transformative thing about NAC and the dream. You see that? Yeah. Right now, we are struggling with the whole idea about, okay, what is it that is good for this country? We don't seem to recognize what is good for this country, and that is why, for example, there's very minimum reporting about the landmark Supreme Court ruling, which everybody is congratulating us for. The media is struggling to even have editorials that praise that. Why? I mean, that is a higher calling for this country. How come we are not being robust about saying that one of the institutions that is key to holding this country together, the IBC, is collapsing again? How? Instead, we have weak editorials calling for respect for institutions that do not seem to want to respect themselves. How come? You see that? Mm-hmm. So for me, the media is timid. Okay? The media is timid, the media is partisan, and in the partisanship, both in terms of media enterprises and the journalists, we are afraid to declare that we are being partisan, not for the national agenda. I mean, because there's nothing wrong with being partisan anyway. For me, I can easily say that I can be partisan to the greater good of this country. For example, I am fairly unapologetic about being partisan in terms of congratulating the Supreme Court about what they have done, because this country needs to move on. If other people are taking in a different trajectory, then we need to move to that direction. That is the point I'm making, that the media must be bold enough to say, this is what is good for the country, even if it aligns itself to a political formation. There's nothing wrong with that. We have done that in the past, okay? Now, what we would, in terms of curing what we have, I am calling for a very, very honest discussion within the media sector, among journalists, because we never interrogate ourselves well enough in terms of, and what we should guide us essentially is, where do we want to see Kenya? If we have benchmarks about where we want to see Kenya, then the arguments about partisanship won't be difficult. We'll be able to say we must package stories like this. No. The question of objectivity, that one is not there. Fairness, yes. Okay. Objectivity, no. All right. Yeah.
All right. Very long from experience. Thank you. And as I go to Henry, Moses Klaj says the cure for partisan is for the media to play their role of keeping the government in check. Your point. Finally, Maina.
I think it's important to understand that if you're going to make a case for mass media, using journalists as professionals who engage in it, then there is need for proper training. We shouldn't underestimate the role of training, and training can be formal and it can be informal. So there are people who would arrive from universities and colleges trained, but there are also programs within media houses that can bring people up to speed on basics about journalism. But two, if media houses are going to feel that there is need to endorse a position on an issue or candidate, then they must take courage internally to review that position so that they collectively say, this is the position we have arrived at and this is why. The challenge the country is suffering from is endorsements that are secret. So the rest of us engaging on the media product, we begin to discern that here is an endorsement, but Sadiq and his team have not said this is an endorsement of a given entity. So we can begin to train ourselves in how to arrive at those processes of endorsement. But the third part is about what journalism is all about. That if Henry were to write a story, he's not the determinant of if it will be on a page or on air. There is an editor, there is somebody else who makes that determination. Okay. And that's what makes it different from an individual blogger. Because as a blogger, I make a decision on when to have the story run. And that's what the country needs now. More are professional journalists.
Okay.
Because we can't rely on bloggers 100%.
All right.
Sometimes they are hatchet men and hatchet women because they need to push through a given story. And we know
For their
that
own
media
benefit.
houses can...
be supported by the public.
Yes, and professionals...
We have to end.
Professionals can be supported by the public purely through buying those products.
Yeah.
That's why Nation is in town.
Okay.
They've supported them all along.
Yeah.
All right. We have to end, gentlemen. I'm not going to allow you to speak anymore. You will come back here, Sadiq. Thank you very much. You will come back and talk about this. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for coming. And as I end, Kevin Micheka says, if journalists can't separate personal opinions from the professional, then you are not well trained, period. Talking about training from Henry Maina. I want to end, I would like to make my own ending, but my colleague at Standard, that's Immaculate Akelo, has sent me a text that I'm going to read as my ending. But before I end, I'd like to tell you how people will even judge from where we sit. If we were all practicing in the media houses, they'll start with the Henry Maina. They'll say that's a Kikuyu, supports Jubilee. They'll go next to Janak Olo. Say that's a Luo, supports NASA. Next to Shiko, they'll say that's a Kikuyu, supports Uhuru. Next they will go to Ohito. The same thing, Shaban. They would,
they say about me?
a Muslim. He took a position. He took a position because he's Muslim, you know.
What will they say about Ken?
Ken, they'll say Ken Mijungu is Suba. That one supports NASA. You know? They'll say all that. But I want to thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming. And as we end, remember, this conversation doesn't end here. We are online and it continues online. You have all their Twitter handles so you can engage them. Immaculate Akelo says, any post I see on your social media timeline, that is referring to me, I do not see Ken Mijungu, I see NTV. Journalists are brand of the larger media house which they work for. And lastly, she says, journalists are human beings and therefore naturally partisan unless it's on a topic that does not interest them, which we should take because we can perform well on topics that don't interest us. The public already associates certain journalists to specific groups from names, regions, and other things. A long text, but I'd like to end there. I want to thank you.
I think you should end it. Journalists should always be beyond reproach.
Reproach, yes. I'd like to end there. Thank you very much, and thank you for my crew who have been here with us for the last close to 2 hours to make sure this is successful. I want to thank you once again for coming. And Press Plus continues online, but we go off air. But remember, we'll still be here next week on Monday.